Into one of the most deadly pieces of real estate in the Bay Area, the Army Street housing projects in San Francisco. The federal agency that owns the buildings wants to tear them down, but some people say a man with a criminal past is preventing that from happening and is in effect holding the people who live in the projects hostage. Here is part 2 of Brian Bandmiller's report.
In 1952, the federal government built the Army Street projects as a refuge for the poor. Life was simpler then, before gangs and crack cocaine moved in.
Come out to see you bad guys. You're the bad guys, right?
Every night, young men lurk outside these eerie structures.
It's like it's a regular drug supermarket. I guess feel like the only way they can make it sometimes is that it's around involving in the life of crime, dealing drugs, being involved in robberies.
Today, the project is a killing ground. The faces of those who have died here still haunt the hallways. 20-year-old Anthony Ledbetter killed March 17th in a drug dispute. 24-year-old Lily Lewis died that same day along with Ledbetter. 23-year-old Felicia Stanbury was stuffed into the trunk of a car, driven to Twin Peaks, and shot to death. Police say she knew too much about this man's murder.
5 years later, I still run into people who remind me of Felicia Stanbury. They say, I'm not going to end up like that girl from Army Street.
Police are still searching for Felicia's killers.
Witnesses just poof, disappeared.
Are you the man? Are you the man? I gotcha. I gotcha.
Former San Francisco Mayor Art Agnos, now the Regional Director of Housing and Urban Development, is so fed up with the killing here, he sees only one answer.
I would tear this down, absolutely. We ought to bulldoze them.
Agnos says this project should have been demolished long ago, and by now tenants would be living in townhouses with backyards. But he says this convicted crack cocaine dealer is blocking federal plans.
He's been able to muscle his way in here somehow.
Agnos says Jeffrey Branner controls the Bernal Dwellings Tenants Association.
It shocks me that someone who doesn't live here, who has a series of convictions for cocaine dealing, one of the difficult problems out here, can somehow become the leader of the tenants group.
For more than a year, the Tenants Association here has failed to give the approval necessary to release federal funds to tear the project down.
Right now, the residents themselves are not sure. They're scared of displacement and where they will be in the next 2-3 years if this process goes forward.
He's a thug. He's a bully. He's an opportunist. Hey, fellas. You live here?
Yeah. Sergeant Tim Dempsey, a narcotics inspector who is the liaison between the San Francisco Police Department and the FBI, says Branner has a good motive for blocking the demolition of this place.
He's making a lot of money tax-free under the table. He's got a lot at stake.
Dempsey believes Branner may be benefiting from the drug trade that thrives here. For 9 months in 1993, Dempsey and his team watched from a window as Jeffrey Branner dealt drugs in these projects. Part of a crime family, police say controlled a multi-million-dollar a year trade in crack cocaine here.
I'll get you another one if you want another one.
I'll wait.
Come on.
Here, his sister Judy sells crack cocaine to Dempsey, who is disguised as a doctor. Then there is Branner's Uncle Sammy and his brother Eugene.
He looks like a Branner from this angle.
What time for you? How many units you got coming down here?
After this police sting, Eugene Branner was killed by a stray bullet during a neighborhood gunfight. The criminal enterprise collapsed, and 7 Branners went to jail.
Jeffrey Branner.
And Jeffrey, in March, he pleaded guilty to possession with intent to sell crack cocaine. But Branner didn't go to jail. Instead, Judge Claude Parasso sentenced him to probation and community service. Branner does have powerful supporters. Housing Commissioner Karen Huggins and former Housing Authority Executive Director Felipe Floresca both told me they think Branner has reformed. Branner is back on his old turf, and according to his attorney, is simply a consultant to the Tenants Association. But some tenants told us off camera he does far more than consult.
They tell us they don't stand up because they're afraid, that you intimidate them into silence.
I haven't intimidated anyone.
But several tenants told us they would not appear on camera because they are afraid of Branner. This woman and her granddaughter asked we not reveal their identities.
Jeffrey Branner is a big joke. Leave her alone.
KTVU obtained this 1993 police report filed by a tenant who claims Branner threatened to kill her 2 sons. The report states The victim told me that Jeffrey Branner told him that he and his brothers ran the Army Street projects, and anybody that crossed them ends up dead. But residents aren't the only ones who say they have been threatened.
Some police have told us that their lives have been threatened because they've been digging in too tight to what's going on down here.
To threaten a police officer, that's a violation of the law. You know that, right?
It is against the law, but this 1994 police report says he has done it. He stated that we weren't and he could have us done any time. Jeffrey Branner also stated that he had guns and would shoot us if he had to.
This is a problem.
It's not very enlightening to our kids, I can tell you that.
Despite his past violence, Branner still strolls the playground here. Police say the future of the 478 women, men, and children who must survive here every day is firmly in his hands.
Now, what angers police and HUD officials is that Branner now works in the San Francisco School District, teaching children how to live in a drug-free environment. That's the community service the court imposed, rather than sending Branner to prison for possessing cocaine with intent to sell.